Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Two Soca, Two Sisters of a Certain Age, Conversations with a Therapist and a Doctor. I am your co-host, Dr. Sophia Grant, board-certified pediatrician and board-certified child abuse pediatrician.
And I am your co-host, Judy Grant, licensed marriage and family therapist.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
So,
hey.
This is a thrilling day for us because we have a family member on. I think we've had Mummy on, but this is our cousin, Nikki. So this is Mummy's niece and Nikki's Mummy's brother's daughter. And she's much younger than us. We actually left Jamaica when she was teeny tiny, so we don't really know her very well. But when I did my ancestry, she popped up as a relative. And then what did I do? I reached out on Facebook, and then we met when I was in Philadelphia. And then when she moved to Texas right when I was leaving. So we missed each other. But Nikki, can you tell us a little bit about what your background is that gives you the expertise to talk about money that we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me. My name is Nikki Jacks. I have a bachelor's degree in finance. I have a master's, an MBA in international business. I've been working in financial services my entire career. So when I was a senior in high school, I did this program called Inroads. And Inroads works with minority youth to match them with corporations. And my first internship, or my internships between my senior year in high school and my freshman year in college that summer, when friends were taking the summer off or working at the mall or being camp counselors, I was actually working at a bank. So at 17 years old, because I graduated at 16, started college at 17. At 17 years old, I was underwriting personal loans. So at that time, a very long time ago, you could go into, this was in Connecticut where I finished high school and did my undergrad degree. You could go into your local supermarket if there was a branch of the bank that I worked for, and you could get what's called a quick loan, a quick personal loan up to $5,000. You walk into the branch, and in 30 minutes, you get a decision. So that was my introduction to finances, really. And even though throughout my career, I spent much of my career working more in marketing and strategy, I've always stayed very close to the finance space through either personal finance or helping friends, family members prepare for their future as well. And so I've been working now professionally. I just celebrated my 15-year anniversary with JP Morgan. Prior to that, I was working with GE for just under 6 years. So I've spent 20 years in financial services.
Okay.
Wow. We had open enrollment at my agency in November. So you start looking at all of your benefits, and I really started to look at my 401k. And of course, you start to panic because you're trying to think of what am I going to do when I retire? How much money do I need to have, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was then that I met with our financial advisor that works with my agency. And we looked at my long-term goals in regards to 401k and retirement. And I increased my contribution. And because it was such a great conversation to have, and I don't think many of us have it. What do you anticipate for your lifestyle when you retire? What does that look like to you? Is it that you need $50,000 a year to live, or do you need 100? And based upon how you answer that question, okay, now let's backward engineer and figure out what you want for your 401k. So I found it very, very helpful, kind of scary. Yes, to have this conversation, but I'm so glad that I did because I don't really know much about money and investments and how all of that works. So it's so good to have you here to help to educate us a bit on these topics.
Nick, go ahead. You were going to say something?
No, I was just going to say that money is one of the things that I'm glad I learned about early, because and we'll talk about this, the benefit of knowing about money early is the earlier you start, the easier it will be as you get older. So we'll talk a bit about, what I've been doing, and I'm not a poster child by any stretch of the imagination. I've made tons of mistakes over the years, but learned from them. But I think most importantly for me, in addition to preparing for my retirement, is also preparing for my son's future. He's 7 years old, and would love to get into that conversation as well in terms of what I'm doing just to make sure that he is set when he becomes an adult.
So what is, at the beginning of the year, people make resolutions like, oh, I'm going to save more. If you could tell people like one or two things to start doing now, like if you have been reckless with your finances, and you want to get on a better footing, what would you recommend they start with now?
So
And I'm taking notes, Nikki.
My word, every year I started this with my team at work. Actually, someone on my team started this. We pick a word of the year as a team, and it could be something personal or professional. My word of the year is discipline. So whether it's finances, whether it's exercise, whether it's eating, my word is discipline, and trying to be more disciplined. And I think that's probably the most critical thing when it comes to finances. The best time to start improving your financial health and your financial life is today, right? If you haven't been doing it before, the best time is today, right? You can't wait until tomorrow. So I think the first thing is making a decision in terms of what do you want your financial health to look like? Because you have to start with where you're trying to go before you can start to think about what are the things that you need. I think the other great thing about the start of the year, as we're looking back, is you can look back at last year, because lots of times people say, okay, start writing down every dollar that you spend. You have a whole year of history last year to see how you spent your money. There are tons of apps out there that you can use to budget. Your credit cards give you a year-end summary that can be very, very scary. You have your bank accounts, all that. Just spend a few hours. I use an old school spreadsheet, right? And what I've done for the full year is I know how much I've estimated, because I won't know what my raise and my bonus looks like until this week, actually, is when we communicate at JP Morgan. But I estimated based on last year, every single paycheck from January 15th, because we get paid the 15th in the end of the year, through the end of the year, right? At the end of the month, I mean. I budgeted every single paycheck where those dollars are going, between bills, right? Between my mortgage, my son's 529, my 401k. I know for the full year, I will meet the maximum that you can contribute to a 401k in a year, not just the maximum to get your match from your company, but the maximum period, because those are, and this isn't tax advice, but as your income starts to grow and you look for every single place where you can get tax credits, maxing out that 401k is a really easy way to get those tax benefits. So I have my full 2024 financial picture, assuming nothing changes with work, of where all my money will be. So I'll know how much I'll save, how much I'm spending on shopping, or what my budget is for shopping. I think we have to understand where every dollar goes. And literally, when I get paid, I go to that spreadsheet and I make sure like my bills are paid, the money goes where it needs to go. And then I know within this 2-week period or within this month period, how much fun money I have, right? So if there's a dollar that hasn't been budgeted, and I budget saving, I budget giving, I budget investing. Like I said before, I budget for my son. So this is like money that's truly left over where it doesn't have a place to go within the budget. I decide, am I going to treat myself? Or is this money that maybe the market is down and it's a good time for me to buy more, so let me just put that money there? So I think in summary, it's taking a look back at how you spent your money last year. Are there things that you need to tighten up? Do you need all those subscriptions? Do you need to make that trip to Nordstrom that frequently to get that many pairs of shoes? Do you really need, another sweater? Should you be putting more money aside because last year when your heater broke, you had to put that on a credit card and you still pay interest on that, right? Where's the money for those emergencies? So take a look back at how you spent your money and then take a look forward on how you want to improve the way you allocate money. So I think if you have the discipline and you have an understanding of how you spent and an understanding of how you want to improve, I think you're in a really good place for the year.
So I recall a time when I was a new doctor and I wasn't really being paid well, and I didn't even have money for true maternity clothes. And I just didn't have any money to save. And people would say, oh, just save a little bit. And you're like, even $20 is a lot. What do you say for those people who just feel like they don't have enough to even start the process? It's just, do you suggest, well, instead of living in an apartment by yourself, get a roommate? I mean, how? Because the discipline of budgeting and say that's very important, but some people just don't feel like they have enough for everything. What do you suggest?
Mm-hmm. I think for people, and I've been there, right? Whether it is mismanagement of funds or living a lifestyle above what I have, or to your point, recent graduate student loans, etc. Don't be hard on yourself. There was a time when I used to overdraft my account, right? And I would get hit with a fee. So instead of beating myself up, when I do my look back, it's like, okay, last year I overdrafted my account 10 times. This year, I only want to do it 5 times, right? So I think if you're starting from a place of, I don't have much, don't be hard on yourself and set small goals. Like if you don't have much, don't set a goal like I want to save $100,000 or I want to invest $1 million, right? If you have nothing in your savings account, try to get to $100, right? And celebrate those small milestones. I didn't start out when my son was born maxing out his 529. That came over time. Now I'm really happy I'm able to do that because God has blessed me and financially I'm doing fairly well. But you can't, if you have nothing, I think just celebrate those small milestones. And I think that look back to see, is there something that you can give up? Instead of you subscribing to Netflix and Peacock, can you get with a friend so they subscribe to Peacock and you subscribe to Netflix and you share? If you live in an apartment building, if you're paying for Wi-Fi, could you in a neighbor pool and you pay for Wi-Fi and they pay for something else, right? Like lean on your network, lean on your village to see what's out there. One of the things I also like to do either at the start of the year or the end of the year is I go through my closet. And whether it is designer stuff or whether it is, less designer things, there are things that I might be able to sell, consign to make some extra money. Or if I don't think I'll get much money, I'll donate it because even though I may not be doing great, there's somebody who could benefit from it. So that helps as well. So I think it's like, and then another thing I'm doing is I literally looked around the house and there was all this stuff in the garage. I'm like, let me post it to Facebook Marketplace. So it's like a $20 that you sell something for here, $100 that you sell something for there. Like that extra money that I wasn't counting for, that can go towards something. So I think for people who feel like they don't have it, right? Just take an accounting of what you have in your space that could produce income. Or do you have a special skill? Is there something that you're really good at? There are stay-at-home moms in my neighborhood who are really good. Like they have like the cry cut machine. So like when I need to do custom shirts for Jackson, my son, for anything, like this isn't something that is a career for them, but they started a little, a business aside hustle, which is fairly low expense. There are things online that you can do to bring in some extra money. There are surveys that you can take, right? There is, I forget the name of the network that I use sometimes, like people who are graphic designers. There's like a website that you can go if you have services that you can.
Oh, Fiverr. Fiverr.
Yes, Fiverr. Yes, yes. So it's like if you can do those things, if you have access to an automobile, can you do Instacart?
Right.
Can you do Uber if you're comfortable with that, depending on where you are? I think what's great about this economy is there's so many there's a gig economy now that we didn't have when I was fresh out of college and I didn't have a child.
Right.
So it's like at that time I had nothing but time, but we didn't have these other things that you can, bring in some extra dollars. So I think it starts with the accounting. Is there anything you can do to adjust your spending? And I never recommend to people not to buy things that they like or not to spend money on things that bring them joy, because there's nothing worse than feeling like you don't have money and then you also don't have joy. Right? So it's like starting with that accounting of how am I spending my money? Where is it going? And then if I really need to bring in more money, are there side hustles that I can do? Do I need to make a career switch? Right? Like, is there something different? My story is a little bit unique in that I've been with the same company for 15 years. I've had 7 different roles. So I'm not one of those people who stayed with the same company and my salary hasn't increased. So I've benefited there. But I think you have to like really look within and take an accounting of your space and say, what can I do? Do I either need to reduce my spending or increase my income so that I can get to that milestone? So again, if I was overdrafting my account 10 times, if I do it 9 times this year, then that's better than the 10 times, and celebrating, those small milestones.
Yeah. And,
Right.
Nick, go ahead, Judy. I was saying,
Go ahead. One of the things that
you go.
Okay. One of the things that I find helpful, even if it's a little bit, have that automatic deduction from your paycheck, and you don't, after taxes and everything, you're not going to notice that it's $20 less. You just kind of forget about it. And then you go into that bank account, you're like, whoa, my savings has grown. I didn't even think about it. So it's if you can do the auto deductions, again, like 401k, you make your contribution. You're not expecting that additional money in your paycheck, and you kind of forget about it. And then you get to see, how much that has grown. So I know that even my bank has an automatic savings account for me. So it goes right into my checking account and pulls out money. I don't do it. It does it automatically. So my savings grows without me actually transferring money into my savings account. So I think if you can find those auto deductions, auto move, whatever you call it, you don't even think about the fact that it's happening. You simply adjust.
There are 2 things that a couple of coworkers did that I know do. I don't do this, but one of my coworkers, since the day she started working, she just put $5 in an account that she never touches. That's like her, in case of real emergency, break glass. Like you never miss $5, right? And then I have another coworker who programs, for those of us who are fortunate enough to get annual raises, she programs that whatever the difference is between this year's salary and next year's salary, so the raise, she doesn't even see it. That goes straight to another account as well. So it's like again, I think it's really important to do that personal accounting of where can you find ways to find, those extra pockets of money to put aside.
Yes. I wanted to go back to something that you said, is that even though you've been in the company for a long time, you have had many different roles. So your salary isn't stagnant. So you're making a move and you're moving up every time. Oftentimes you get into a job and you're really comfortable and you like everybody, but you're at the highest level you can be at. And, that may be perfectly fine. But sometimes you have to get into that space of discomfort to change what you do in order to make more money.
Yeah. And I think for me, I wholeheartedly agree. For me, it's been a combination of either role expansion or, people that I've worked with have said, hey, I have this new role open on my team. Are you open to it? But for those of us in corporate America, so I shared, I work for JP Morgan, huge company. my biggest recommendation, especially for people of color, is when you think about the people who have had the biggest impact on my salary have been white men, right? I've literally worked for I've worked for many white males, but I've worked for 2 white males who literally looked at my salary and said, you don't make enough. And they were my advocates to give me those increases. And I think sometimes as people of color, when we go into spaces where we're the minority, we tend to gravitate towards people who look like us. And that's good, right? But the people who are going to take the bull by the horns in corporate America in terms of salary, income, are white males typically, right? So whether you work for a white male or you have a strong white male mentor as a part of your community, right? Because I have mentor sponsors of all races, ages. I have people who are younger than me who I talk to many times, because one of the things I learned from young people is like more balance, right? And things like that. So making sure that you have this community of people, or I call it my corporate board of directors. I don't just have one mentor. I don't just have my boss who I look to, or a friend at work. I have this person who helps me to, work on leadership, or this person to give me feedback on a presentation. But I always encourage people when they go into corporate spaces, don't be afraid of people who don't look like you, because many times those are the people who are going to help you navigate those landmines and get to, what should you be earning? It's my current boss now, it's to the point where when headhunters call me and I'm like, well, this is what I would need to leave, they're like, we can't match that, because he's done such a good job of making sure that I'm, adequately compensated.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful that you have those advocates.
Yeah.
I mean,
because
you're in a great position.
Our friends look like us, our family members look like us. Some of us were first generation working in corporate America. So I learned very early that, like, if I'm going to be successful here, I need people who know this game. Right? It can't just all be, I can't just lean on my parents. I love them to death, but they haven't, my dad is still in Jamaica, so he can't help me navigate like corporate America in the United States. And, my girlfriends were all learning at the same time, right? So it's like how do you build this team of people to help you navigate? And I think it's such an important topic when we talk about money, because they're the ones that I'm learning from in terms of investing and, making sure that when is the right time to buy. Like, you should always be investing. But if many people look at the stock market and they say, oh, stocks are down, I need to sell. No, if you sell when it's low, you're going to lose money. Me, I treat it as something's on sale, and I love a good sale. So it's like, if, the S&P 500 index fund is on sale, I would rather buy that than go buy the Chanel bag, right? I'll put the thousands of dollars in the market, because that's going to grow. The Chanel bag will grow as well. But
I was about to say, it depends on the style, but yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So Nikki, let me ask this. I only know about the stock market because I, hear about it, financial news, what have you. I have no idea how to actually work it. So can you give us a very, very basic introduction into what we're even supposed to look for? How do we choose a stock? Like, because I think people like me get overwhelmed by that. Like, stock market, I think it can prevent people from dipping their toes in because they don't know what to do.
So I think there are a couple of things I recommend. I feel like whatever social network you're in, right, or on, whatever your preference is, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, there are a plethora of financial advisors and people out there to learn from. But this is how I explain it to my friends. So you can go into Louis Vuitton, you can spend $3,000 on a handbag, right? Depending on the style, like Sophia said, it could appreciate in value. And when you sell it in 5 years, 10 years, you might be able to get your money back, or you might sell it at a discount, or you might keep it for the next generation. If you buy a piece of LVMH stock. So Louis Vuitton is a part of a conglomerate called Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. So it's a series of different designers. So Louis Vuitton, Celine, Moet, Hennessy, a bunch of different lifestyle brands make up this company. If I spend $3,000 buying shares of LVMH stock, I now have ownership in that company, right? And history tells us that that company, as long as it continues to do what it's supposed to do, people love its brands, et cetera, that company will appreciate in value over years. So that $3,000 that I put in LVMH, in 5-10 years, that $3,000 handbag, I might get $3,000 back from it. But in 5-10 years, that $3,000 stock should continue to appreciate at a higher level, right? So I don't typically buy individual companies. I buy a basket of companies. So when I referenced the S&P 500 earlier, that's a collection of the top 500 companies on one of the stock market indices, if you will, right? Historically, you can buy what's called an ETF, which is one share is like micro pieces of each of those companies. Historically, the S&P 500 has grown about 10% every single year, 8 to 10% every single year. So it's almost like if you put $100 in the S&P, at the end of the year, that $100 turns into 108. Now, next year, that 108 turns into whatever 8% is of 108, and it continues to grow and grow and grow and grow. So that's why when you're buying into the stock market, I don't want to say guarantee because there are no guarantees. Certainly stocks rise and they fall and it's cyclical, right? But it usually is a good way for to watch your money grow, right? And what I tell my friends is, again, if you have $3,000 to spend, instead of buying a $3,000 handbag, if you're not investing, why not put $1,500 in the stock market and $1,500 in the handbag, and then you watch and see how it grows, right? And in a year, take a look at what's the value of the $1,500 handbag, what's the value of your $1,500 stock, and then you determine how you want to invest every single year. So basically, the stock market is just buying pieces of the companies that you're buying. You can do an individual company or you can do groups of companies. So the S&P 500 is just one example of like a group of companies you can buy. They have lots of other what's called funds, right? So the ETF would be a fund. Lots of other funds that are based on different things. It could be a tech fund. So that would be you're buying shares of Google, Amazon, things like that. It could be an emerging fund. So this is like companies that were small and now they're getting bigger. It could be an international fund, right? So it could be a group of international companies. I definitely recommend people also speak to financial advisors just to get, guidance and investing where they're comfortable. I don't like to watch the stock market because for me, it's too anxiety driven. So just like you said, you have that money that automatically goes into your savings account. I have money that just automatically goes and it buys shares. Right? So it's called dollar cost averaging, where you're just buying, whether it's high, whether it's low, you're buying, you're putting the money in, you're closing your eyes, you're not looking, right? Now, because there is some risk in the stock market, as people get closer to needing the money, right? So retirement, you should start pulling back your investments in the stock market and putting it in places where you are more comfortable, right? Right. So if you think about it, like if I worked at American Airlines or any airline industry right before 9/11 and I was going to retire on September 13th, 2001. Was it 2001? Yeah, 2001. Right. If all of my retirement was in my American Airlines stock, we all know what happened to airline stock after 9/11. It all tanked. Your money would no longer be there, right? We learned that from Enron as well. When Enron failed, people who had all their retirement in their company stock, it fell, right? So it's like as you get closer and closer to retirement, you should be pulling money back. And then there are also funds that are called target rate funds, which say, okay, if you want to retire in 2045. It will automatically adjust for risk each year. So if you buy in today,
Yes.
they're buying riskier stock. Typically, how it should work, more risk, more reward, typically, right? But as you get closer to retirement, they're either going to adjust those to go into more non-risky investments. There are a ton of other things, but I feel like that's probably the most basic way to try to explain it. Depending on who you bank with, I know people don't really go into branches anymore. I know I'm a bit biased because I work for a bank. I don't work on the branch side, but go in and talk to your branch manager and see if there's someone who can help you understand the basics of investing. Is there like a private banker? We definitely have at Chase that can help you understand some of the basics. And do your research, right? To see what they're recommending. Go home, get online. We have so much at our fingertips. Google is our friend. Make sure you're comfortable with what they're suggesting. I tend to like to recommend neutral parties for people because sometimes financial investors are selling their company's things, right? And they may not be the best return. I'm yet to see somebody really, when they say beat the market, it's really beating the S&P 500, which is that collection of 500 stock. If you do nothing else and you put money there, you should be okay, in the long term.
So if I want to take that $3,000 and invest in the stock market, can I go online, find the fund, and deposit money into that? Or do I need to go through an investment banker? Is this something I can do on my own?
You can certainly do it on your own. So there are quite a few companies where you can open what's called a brokerage account. So depending on your bank, you can open a brokerage account with them. You can also do it through, I wouldn't know all of them because I just do it straight through Chase. We have our own app. But your bank can help you. And then there are things like Vanguard, Fidelity is another popular one that people use. But it's important to note that these funds are not insured by the FDIC like your deposits in your bank account would be, in your savings account or your checking account. So the FDIC insures up to $250,000 worth of deposits in your personal checking or personal savings. Investing in the stock market, that $3,000 could be $3,010 tomorrow. It could be $2,950 the day after. But you're not going to lose money until you sell those shares, right? If you sell them at a price that's less than what you purchased them for, that's when you lose money. Right? That's why I also recommend to people, don't put money in the market that you need tomorrow or next week or the week after that, right? Make sure you have your emergency savings because the last thing you want is, oh my God, I need this money. I have to sell these shares and I'm selling them at a loss. When if you had waited for like another year or so, it could have been a gain. But Fidelity is a popular brokerage that many people use. And I think they have lots of like how-to guides, maybe on YouTube and things like that. I think, is Robinhood one? I'm not sure. And I'm not recommending any because none of these are ones that I use. I just invest straight through Chase, partially because I have to because of my role and my access to non-public information. I have to trade through an organization that my company can monitor at any time just to make sure I'm not doing any insider trading or up to anything nefarious.
Nikki, you mentioned emergency savings. How much do you recommend that people having savings? I remember there was a time when people would say 6 months worth of savings and you're like, are you kidding me? How much do you recommend?
I think it depends on the personal situation, right? So I'm a single mom. I am a homeowner. So I like to have 6 months, right? Because if I live in Texas, right? We have hailstorms. I have a deductible for my insurance in case something happens to the house. My car is paid off, but it has 140,000 miles on it. So, you pray that it continues to work, but I may have to go tomorrow, right? To go get. Mm-hmm. So it depends on the situation. The good thing is, if I got laid off tomorrow, because I've been with the firm for so long, my severance is pretty extensive. So I may be a bit too anal with the 6 months. And when I say savings, it's not like in my savings account. It's in a high yield savings account. And then I have some money in T-bills, short-term T-bills as well, that earn a bit of interest. So I think it depends on the person. And it depends on your village as well. I'm in Texas. I don't have anybody who lives here. I'm paying a mortgage on my own, right? If you live in a city or you're a single person and you can go back home to mom or dad, right? I don't think you need a 6-month savings cushion, right? But if you don't have family, if you're the primary, provider for the family, then I think you should look for the 6-month cushion, depending on the economy as well, right? If you are in a field where where things are going well, you could get a job, next week, then you may not need the 6 months. But everyone thought tech was safe, and we're seeing reports where Google is planning to lay off 20,000
Yes, I saw that.
Right? If you are living in Silicon Valley where expenses are high, and you're living paycheck to paycheck, and all the tech companies around you are laying off, so it may take a while to find another role, you will need, that 6 months. And then there have also been changes to, before traditionally you couldn't, or you would have to pay penalties on making withdrawals from your 401k, hardship withdrawals. Some of those rules have changed this year. So I think people who have been saving in their 401k, if they don't have those savings, that emergency fund, they might be able to take some money from there. But my recommendation is, again, I keep saying this, a personal accounting, right? Nikki Jacks, 43 years old, single mother, primary provider for her son, has more than 6 months worth of expenses that I can draw from if need be. But not everyone is going to be, in my seat. If I were just starting out, when I just graduated from college, I didn't have an emergency fund. I was living at home. I think I may have been paying like the cable bill or something. So I didn't have, I was out having a grand time. I was traveling. I was in New York. I was, doing all the things, right? So I think it really depends on where you are and what your financial responsibility is. What I like about having the cushion is it's no stress. It's no stress for me. And I wouldn't quit my job without a backup. Again, I have a child I need to provide for. But if it came down to it and it's like, this is just not working for me, I have an idea of something else I want to do, I feel good in having that cushion and knowing that, I'm okay if I get laid off or if I decide I want to pivot and do something different.
Okay. Can you touch a little bit on the dangers of credit cards?
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Yeah. So credit cards.
This is a lesson that they should actually teach this in high school.
A credit card
they should teach it.
Let's be clear. It's absolutely a loan. And I work for a company that issues credit cards, right? And we do very, 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 very well because people don't pay what they charge in full at the end of every month. So if you, again, that word discipline, if you have the discipline where you are charging on a card and you are paying for what you bought when that bill comes in, you're good. But if you bought the $3,000 Louis Vuitton handbag and when your bill comes, you're only paying $30, it's not going to take 3,000 divided by 30 to pay that off because interest is going to compound, right? So if you bought the $3,000 handbag and for ease of calculation, let's say you paid $1,000 toward that handbag, interest is going to compound on the $2,000, right? But next month, if you only have $500 to pay towards that handbag, the balance is not $2,000. It's $2,000 plus interest. Yes. So your $500 is going to be coming from now, let's say it's $2,200. So now you have $1,700 left to pay on that handbag, right? And that's so you're going to continue to pay interest on top of interest every single month that it takes you to not pay it off. So it's very, very dangerous, and it's a slippery slope. And I got into trouble because I misused credit cards, not because I didn't know any better, just because I was living above my means. Like I said, I was living in Connecticut. I wanted to be out in New York having dinners and going on trips, and I had really good credit. So I got, these high credit lines. So I felt like, I'm going to pay it off because I'm home. I don't have rent to pay. Right. And it's like, what became frustrating for me is like every time you get a bonus, you get this decent bonus, and your bonus is primarily going to pay off these cards. So it's paying off things that you already did. You can't even do anything new.
Right.
So I think it's important for people to understand that a credit card is like a walking loan, and we want our money back. And we are going to charge you, right, to take out that loan every time you swipe it.
Yes.
So let me ask this question. So let's say you've got 2 or 3 credit cards, and you have $3,000 balance here, $1,500 here, $1,000 there. Do you recommend that you focus your attention on paying off one card and getting that done, and maybe doing minimum payments on the others? Or you, on a monthly basis, should you try to be spreading it out to pay them all down at the same time?
So I think it depends on how, people talk about love languages. I think I talk about like what affirms you. So if you feel a sense of accomplishment for getting one paid off, then focus on the smallest balance, right? And like pay as much as you can to that smallest balance and pay the minimums on the rest. And then they call that the snowball method, right? Where let's say you have a budget of $1,000 that you can pay towards credit cards. So instead of 300, 300, 300, or 333, 333 spreading across the 3 cards, right? Maybe you pay $700 on the first one to get that balance down as quickly as possible, and then you split $150 on the rest of them. And then when you pay off that one, it's not like you continue to pay the $150 on the others. You take $700 plus $150 on credit card number 2. Now you're paying $850 on that one, right?
Okay.
Pay that one down, and then now when that one's done, you have $1,000 left. Put the full $1,000 to the third one. That they call snowball. So there's that. If you really want to minimize how much interest you're paying, instead of ordering it by balance, you order it by which one is charging the highest interest rate, right? Because that one, that will save you money over the long term. That might be the biggest balance. You might get discouraged, right? So you have to know yourself and know what feels best for you. And we talk about the dangers of credit cards. Student loans are similar because interest is compounded on student loans the same way they're compounded on credit cards, which, by the way, if President Biden or Kamala are listening, that's the biggest issue I think that we could fix, is how we compound interest on student loans. If I take out $1,000 student loan, I should just pay 5% simple interest on that. I shouldn't be paying interest on interest on interest. So, but I bring up student loans because there's some recent, there have been lots of discussion around like student loans being forgiven, or changes to some student loans. So I have student loans still from when I went to grad school. I have 4 student loans that I'm paying on. And what I was going to do is exactly what I just talked about, the snowball method, where I pay off the smallest balance first, like just get that out of the way and go to the next one. But I recently read that there are some changes in the rules where I think you might be able to, if you've been paying for 10 years, you might be able to get loans under that. The original amount was under, I think it's $12,000 forgiven. So for me, it's like, okay, instead of snowballing my let's say my $6,000 loan to get that out of the way, I'm now going to switch and pay off the biggest loan first, because that one is unlikely to be forgiven, whereas I might be able, so I'll pay the minimum on the $6,000 one. I'll pay more on the one that was originally $60,000 to get that one down, knowing that it's a possibility that the $6,000 one could get forgiven. So I think it all depends on, again, not personal accounting of what does your financial situation look like, and what's going to make you feel like you accomplished something. If you're going to feel accomplished by paying off the small one, pay off the small one. Like, don't think about anything else. If that's going to give you a sense of accomplishment, pay off that small one first. but I definitely don't recommend spreading evenly. Like I have $1,000, let me do 333, across all of them.
Right, right, right. And I know that there are some credit cards that will give you some benefits. So you earn points. And you can earn those points towards your balance. So there are some cards out there that have these built-in benefits to you. But again, you don't want to use it unless you have to pay it off, so on and so forth. But at least that is now an option.
Yeah. So, and I want to be clear on something as well. Most of America is in credit card debt. So no one should feel ashamed because they're in credit card debt. Some of us are there because we're living above our means. Some of us are there, like you said, Sophia, earlier, because like we just can't make ends meet any other way. So no one should feel shame because they have a credit card balance, right? Like, let's not start there, because if you start from a place of shame, you're going to continue to feel like it's an insurmountable task to get rid of it. So understand that, again, I work for a company where we make a lot of money. That means a lot of people, right? And we don't just do credit cards. We do lots of things. When I worked on the credit card side of our business, a lot of people are carrying balances every single month. Let's be clear, okay? My recommendation is to try not to charge more than you can pay for, but that's not everyone's reality for whatever reason. No judgment if you cannot. But I'll use my personal experience. I primarily use 2 credit cards. I have my American Airlines card that I use because I like to get points towards miles, and it also gives me status. And I'll use a good example of when that came in handy. My grandma passed at the end of last year. Last minute, you can't plan for these things. Tickets for Jackson and I from Texas, I think were like $3,000 or something like that. I paid full price for my ticket. I was able to use my miles to pay for Jackson's ticket. So instead of spending $3,000, I spent $1,500. And because I have status on American Airlines, A, because I travel a lot for work, and B, because I use their credit card as my primary card, we were upgraded to first class on the way down and on the way back, right? So if I had bought 2 first class tickets, that would have been way more than the $3,000. But I spent $1,500 and miles and I was able to get me and my son to Jamaica and back, and then free upgrades to first class as well. So there are tons of you have your cards that will give you miles, and that's my preference. Because he's gotten a taste of first class, so now he feels like he should always.
And Jackson would look good in first class.
He looks great in first class, and they love him in first class. And then there are the cashback cards as well. So there are cards that will give you cash back, right? They will. I don't want to start talking about individual cards because I'm not supposed to promote any of our company cards, but research. I think it's the Points Guy. The Points Guy. The Points Guy. The Points Guy is a good source to go and research different cards. So, flying may not be your jam, but maybe you like to stay at hotels, right? There are cards that give you points for hotel stays. I also have points with Marriott because I've stayed there so much, not through their credit card, but we were able, when we went to Jamaica, we stayed at the hotel a few nights for free. So there's definitely good sides to credit cards. And then I also use my American Express Platinum card because I travel a lot for work. And then I like to do the lounges. You have access to the lounges in the airport. The food is better. The drinks are better than like spending money, at an airport restaurant. And I can actually also work in the lounge if I need to, right? There's space for me to take a conference call if I need to, but you need to have that special credit card to give you that access. So they're definitely, again, personal accounting of what makes sense to you. And I think the Points Guide is a really good place to research some of the best credit card deals that are out there, whether you want cashback benefits, travel benefits, or things like that.
I was thinking about my Costco membership.
Yeah.
When I went to get my Costco card, they have the basic, they have the executive. The executive membership, you pay more for the membership, but you get cash back. and then I'm do quick calculation like, oh, I'm going to make this money back. So, just thinking about maybe I have to pay a little bit more now, but there's going to be a cash benefit to me later.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Just thinking that through
Costco
can be helpful.
I'm glad you brought Costco up because I don't use some of their financial products, but they have great financial products like car loans. Some people have had some people I know have done their mortgage through Costco.
Really?
So I think those places where you have memberships, if you have a AAA membership, there are always like different financial offers that are coming to you. AARP memberships, like there are all these, anything that you have to be a member of, typically financial services corporations then have like a database of people that are alike in some way. So as a marketer, it's like if I want to market to like the AARP age group, I would pay AARP to say, hey, I want to present this offer to them. So anything you're a member of, your school alumni association, research those places where they're big numbers, because 9 times out of 10, you'll also find some interesting financial offers there as well.
Yes. And I want to point out that I work for a county and there are benefits for working in that county. You just have to go onto the website. You get rental cars like 40% less, some significant deals. And then when I got solar on my house, it went through Costco. So then at the end, I got this Costco credit card for like $1,000. So that was a nice little perk. So Nikki, can you touch on what is a credit score and what does it mean?
A credit score, I like to tell people, is demonstrating to a financial organization your likelihood of paying back on time. The higher the score, the more likely or the more favorable a company is going to look at you in terms of when you're going to pay them back. And you will likely get the lowest interest rate that they offer, the higher your score is. So a higher credit score means you will pay less in interest over time. A lower credit score doesn't necessarily mean you can't get credit. Your credit is just likely going to be more expensive because you have less people who may be willing to lend to you.
Yes.
Right? So in my mind, it is best. And then when you are doing things like your mortgage, that's probably the biggest purchase that you will make in your financial life, right? When you're going out to buy a mortgage, you want to get the lowest credit score possible. The way you get the lowest the lowest interest rate possible. The way you'll get that is by having as high an interest rate as possible. So, friends of mine who are like, they want to buy a house, I always tell them what you should be doing, like if you're not ready yet, is look at houses that you think you want to buy. Look at the approximate cost of the monthly mortgage. Look at the difference between the mortgage and what you're paying right now. Put that extra money in an account somewhere for 6 months to make sure that you're comfortable. And with that, before you start the mortgage process, I'm assuming you have your down payment somewhere else, right? With that money, if you have outstanding credit card debt, just pay that off because that's going to increase your credit score, right? The less debt you have, and there's an algorithm, so it's not always necessarily hard. It's not like if you have 0 credit card debt, you automatically have an 800 credit score. Right. But the less debt you have, the fastest way to improve your credit is to like pay off a chunk of your credit card debt.
Okay. So how many credit cards do you think are necessary to have kind of like a healthy credit history? You don't need to go and get your Sephora credit card and your, those individual credit cards or TJ Maxx because you saved 10% today. I know you really shouldn't have store credit cards because they have the highest interest rate. But how many cards do you think kind of gives you a healthy history?
I don't think you need more than 2 cards, to be honest. Okay. Like you could even do it with 1 card. If you have 1 card that you're paying off every single month, you're fine. I think you like I love my Nordstrom card because I love my Nordstrom notes, but the key is to pay off what you bought at the end of the month. Right? Like that's the key. If you can't do that, then don't. I saw this online recently and I'm going to implement this year. Someone said that, they like nice things, but what they're going to do or what they have been doing is let's use a $3,000 Louis Vuitton bag. If they're going to buy a $3,000 Louis Vuitton bag, they need to also invest or save $3,000 as well. So it's like, okay, do I really want to spend $6,000 now because that's what the bag is costing, right? I'm buying a bag, but I'm also putting money aside in some way, shape, or form. So that's something I'm definitely going to implement this year just to manage the spending. Because sometimes when we start making money, when we get bonuses, if you get married and now there's a second income, right? And so the bills are the same, the household bills are the same, but you have more disposable income. It's like, okay, I've arrived, so let me start spending more. And what did I say earlier? The best time to start investing and taking control of your finances is today. So if you can implement those good habits early, right? So if you approach it like instead of me going and swiping my card for this $3,000 bag, I'm only swiping if I have the $3,000 to pay it off at the end of the month. So I'm getting my points, but I'm also going to be investing $3,000 over here. So that will continue to grow. If I started doing that when I was 21 years old, I would be a millionaire, like liquid.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Let me ask this question, and I don't know where I heard this, so tell me if this is true or not. If you say you've paid off your credit card and you want to cancel it, does that reflect poorly on your credit score? And why?
Yeah, so the credit score is, remember the bank is looking at your propensity to pay them back on time. If you have cards that you've had for a long time, that is your credit age. So the older you are from a credit standpoint, the better you look because they have more information, they have more payment history, right? So if you cancel that card, that stuff, it's not like it stays on your credit. It almost like it stays on your credit if you have a balance. If you don't have a balance, then it goes away. So my recommendation is not to close it if you don't trust yourself. Right? If you think you're going to go and charge up that Neiman Marcus card next week and buy all the Chanel and Louis Vuitton and you don't have money to pay, close it. Close it, pay it off, blah, blah, blah. But if you have the discipline, put that card aside, just pay it off. Don't spend so you have the credit age. And as your credit continues to age with other things, like then later you can close it. So if you go to I think it may be FICO.com, they do a good explanation of what makes up your credit score. And it's important to note that the credit score that companies typically use to underwrite a loan, whether it's a credit card, a mortgage, a car loan, things like that, it's the different score from what you're going to see through companies like Credit Karma or if your credit card offers your credit score. They're different scores that look at different things. So it's important to understand what it is because many times people are like, oh, my Credit Karma says, I have an 800 score, but I went and I got this really high interest rate, for a car loan. It's because the bank that you went to, they use a different credit formula than what Credit Karma is showing you. So it's important to know and understand how credit scores are calculated. So if you go to FICO.com, they'll be able to explain that for you.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, Nikki, this is a lot of information. And
it is.
Thankfully I do have savings now since I've been practicing for a while. But I remember one time I wanted to rent a video from Blockbuster. It was $1.99 and I couldn't afford it. But yeah, I think we've all been there.
We've all been there. And I think anyone who is watching or listening and feels overwhelmed, we've all been there. And there's an other side. Yeah. But behaviors will need to change before getting to the other side. Right?
For sure.
So I think financial stress is real, right? if you don't know how you're going to pay your bills, if you are in a financial insecure situation, those things are real. I think what I love about this time, like I said before, than when I was coming up, is there's so much information out there to help educate people. And then there's so many resources in terms of if you need to make a little bit of extra money.
Yes, yes. This has been really good information. Okay. So I hope our listeners feel empowered to not be afraid, because it's very easy when you're overwhelmed financially just to ignore it. But you just have to make that first step towards savings and having that discipline.
Yeah. Discipline is hard.
Mm-hmm. And
discipline is hard.
It is because you want it, want it right now.
Yes.
but really thinking like, okay, do I really need this? And then also maybe sit on that idea for a few days, a few weeks before you jump in. Yeah. So you go into it like fully understanding the possible ramifications. Yeah. Well, Nikki, thank you so much for being with us today. Truly a wealth
I love that one.
I love
that.
And help, thank you for explaining some of these things that I didn't know or didn't fully comprehend. I think it was a good lesson for me, and I hope it was a good lesson for our audience as well.
Oh, thank you.
We might just have to bring you back for a part 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to, because I'd love to talk a little bit about 529s and preparing your kids for a strong financial future.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Nikki.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
So to Soka, we just like to thank you for being with us today. It is always a pleasure to have you join us in these conversations. Please be sure to like, follow, rate our podcast, share with family and friends. We would love to hear from you. And hey, even if you have questions for Nikki, like, hey, I'm not so sure, email us and we can forward that question on to her. Candy, how can our audience reach us?
You can reach us via email, twosokapodcast@gmail.com. You can watch us on YouTube at Two Soka Podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Two Sisters of a Certain Age. And I think that's about it.
Okay, that's plenty. Okay, thank you again, everybody. We will see you soon.
Thanks, bye.
No Longer Network.